Ancient warriors marched into battle encased in breathtaking works of art. Why would a soldier wear such intricate armor when simple steel would suffice for protection? We are about to uncover 30 of history's most fascinating ancient armor designs, revealing the hidden language of power, faith, and fear woven into every detail. You will discover why a Greek helmet was made from hundreds of boar tusks and what terrifying transformation occurred when an Anglo-Saxon king put on his masked helmet. These metal masterpieces held secrets far beyond the battlefield. What do you believe was the true purpose of these beautiful and deadly creations? Our journey begins not with gleaming steel, but with a helmet crafted from the very essence of the wild. The Mycenaean boar's tusk helmet is a masterpiece from the Greek Bronze Age, a time when heroes of legend walked the earth. Picture a warrior's head protected not by metal, but by a leather cap entirely covered in overlapping slivers of boar tusk. This created a surface that was both flexible and incredibly strong, a shimmering, ivory-scaled hood that would have caught the light with every movement. The sheer effort involved is staggering. A single helmet required the tusks from dozens of boars, each tusk carefully cut into flat plaques, drilled with tiny holes, and then stitched securely onto the leather frame. This was not the work of a week, but of a master artisan dedicating months to a single piece of armor. So why go to such extravagant lengths? On one hand, the effect was purely psychological. Imagine facing a line of warriors whose helmets seemed alive, gleaming with a pale, unnatural light. The sight alone would sow fear, a clear declaration of wealth and lethal capability. But was intimidation its only purpose? Many historians believe the boar itself held a deeper spiritual power. In the ancient world, to wear the skin or teeth of a powerful animal was to absorb its spirit. By adorning himself with the boar's tusks, the warrior was not just showing off his hunting prowess. He was invoking the boar's raw ferocity, its stubborn resilience, and its terrifying courage in close combat. He was transforming himself, becoming something more than a man as he stepped onto the battlefield. Centuries later and far to the north, another helmet was buried, not with the hope of future glory, but as a final, solemn tribute. When archaeologists uncovered the Sutton Hoo ship burial in England, they found a king's tomb, and with it, a helmet that redefines our understanding of Anglo-Saxon power. Its core is iron, but its soul is something else entirely. The entire face is a mask, a visor of polished metal with a nose, a mustache, and striking eyebrows made of gleaming garnets. This is not a helmet designed for anonymity. It is a second face, one forged in a smithy, not born of flesh. The surface is a riot of intricate art, curving interlace patterns known as knotwork, twist and weave across the cheek guards and the cap, forming a metal tapestry of breathtaking complexity. Stylized animals, perhaps dragons or boars, march across these panels, their forms woven into the very metal itself. But the true focus is that mask. The garnet-inlaid eyebrows catch the light like frozen blood, creating a piercing, intense gaze that would never blink. The nose is a solid ridge of iron, and the mustache is a carefully crafted detail that merges the human with the mechanical. Who was the man who wore this? He was almost certainly a king, perhaps Redwald of East Anglia, a ruler powerful enough to command a ship burial. And this helmet was the ultimate tool of his authority. When he placed it upon his head, he was not merely putting on armor, he was undergoing a ritual transformation. The human king vanished, replaced by a divine or mythical being. The face that looked out upon the battlefield was both familiar and terrifyingly alien. It was the face of a god, an ancestor, or a legendary hero returned to lead his people. The psychological impact would have been overwhelming. His own warriors would see a leader imbued with supernatural power, a figure worthy of their absolute loyalty. His enemies would see an unfeeling metallic specter, a being beyond pain or fear, whose gaze alone promised annihilation. This was the true purpose of such intricate design. It was not decoration for beauty's sake. It was a deliberate act of myth-making, a way for a mortal man to cloak himself in the terrifying power of the divine. Across the vast Eurasian steppes, the wind whispers over seas of grass, and here the Scythians built an empire of horses and gold. Their armor was not the solid plates of Greece or the masked helms of the north. Instead, it was a second skin of leather, alive with the forms of fantastic beasts. Picture a warrior's tunic, and stitched across his chest and arms are dozens of small, shimmering plaques of solid gold. Each one is a masterpiece in miniature, depicting a griffin with a savage beak, a stag in mid-leap, or a panther coiled to spring. The creatures are not shown in peaceful repose. They are captured in dynamic, almost contorted poses, their bodies twisted into arcs of pure energy, as if frozen in a moment of violent transformation. This was the famous Scythian animal style, an art of motion and power. But why cover a functional piece of battle gear with such delicate and precious art? The answer lies not in the gold itself, but in the spirits of the animals it portrayed. For the Scythians, the world was alive with unseen forces. The stag was not just a fast animal. It was the embodiment of speed and agility. The panther was not merely a strong predator. It represented raw, explosive strength and cunning. And the griffin, that legendary eagle-lion hybrid, was a creature of myth, a guardian of the spirit world believed to inhabit the very edges of their known world. By sewing these images directly onto their armor, the Scythian warrior was doing something profound. He was not decorating his gear, he was petitioning the spirits. He was weaving a spiritual armor, a layer of supernatural protection. He believed that by wearing the image of the stag, he could absorb its fleet-footed grace. The panther's plaque would grant him its lethal power, and the griffin, a being that straddled the earthly and the divine, would lend him its otherworldly might, making him a fearsome opponent against both human enemies and supernatural threats. This armor was a wearable prayer, a contract with the spirit world sealed not with words but with gold. From the spiritual gold of the steppes, we journey to the heart of a machine, the Roman Empire and its most iconic armor. The lorica segmentata was a masterpiece of engineering disguised as simple soldier's gear. This was not a single piece of metal. Instead, picture a complex suit of iron strips or segments, carefully arranged over the torso and shoulders. These horizontal plates were fastened together internally by a web of leather straps and secured with delicate brass hinges and buckles. The genius of this design was in its layered flexibility. When a soldier moved, the individual strips could slide against each other, allowing him to bend, twist, and fight with a freedom impossible in a solid breastplate. A direct sword slash would be deflected by the curved, overlapping plates, distributing the force of the blow across multiple segments instead of a single point. But this intricate puzzle of metal and leather presents a profound historical mystery. Why did this brilliantly effective armor appear for only a few centuries before vanishing from the archaeological record? It was the armor of the empire's greatest expansion, worn by the legions that conquered vast territories, yet it was eventually abandoned. The answer may lie in its very complexity. Producing the lorica segmentata was an incredible logistical feat. It required standardized parts, specialized workshops, and a constant supply of brass and iron. Each suit was a testament to Roman industrial might, a weapon produced not just by a blacksmith but by an entire system. This was not armor for a warrior, it was a uniform for a cog in the greatest military machine the ancient world had ever seen. The very system that enabled its mass production may have led to its downfall, as the empire's vast supply chain strained and broke. The legionary, encased in his segmented shell, was both a testament to peak imperial power and a warning of its fragile, interconnected nature. Far from the Roman assembly line, Japanese smiths forged identities in silk and steel. the samurai Omicron Yoroi was more than protection, it was a walking declaration of self. Picture a box like cuirass, rigid and imposing, built to be worn on horseback. Its surface is not plain metal, but a dense tapestry of hundreds of small lacquered iron or leather scales, all bound together by miles of vibrant silk cord. This lacing, the odoshi, was a language in itself. The colors were not random. Crimson signaled youthful courage and martial ardor, while deep indigo conveyed dignity and wisdom. These cords were woven into intricate diamond or cross patterns, a mesmerizing visual rhythm that announced the wearer's status from across the battlefield. But the true focal points were the helmet and the mask. The kabuto helmet often soared upward, sometimes adorned with a pair of striking kuwagata, antler-like projections that framed the face. These were not weapons, but symbolic trophies, echoing the antlers of a stag and proclaiming the warrior's nobility and strength. Below the helmet rested the mempo, the face mask. Crafted of iron and often featuring a detachable nose, its most terrifying feature was the permanent snarl, a set of ferocious metal teeth and a bristling mustache of horsehair. This was not an attempt to look human. It was a deliberate transformation into a demon, a war god meant to paralyze opponents with supernatural dread. Yet even this fearsome visage was part of a larger code. Emblazoned on the breastplate, the sleeves, and even the flag on his back was the warrior's mon, his family crest. A butterfly, a Polonia flower, or a set of interlocking rings, this symbol told everyone who he was, where he came from, and which dynasty he served. Every single element, from the hue of the silk to the curve of the metal antlers, was a carefully chosen word in a silent speech. To face a samurai in his full Omicron Yoroi was to read his entire life story right before he tried to end yours. The Persian Empire's answer to the Roman legionary was a soldier who was more than a man. He was one of 10,000. These were the immortals, the elite royal guard of the Achaemenid kings, and their armor was designed to create an illusion of invincibility. Picture a simple leather tunic. Now imagine it covered from the neck down to the wrists and ankles, in thousands upon thousands of small metal scales. Each individual scale, made of bronze or sometimes iron, was pierced with tiny holes at the top. They were then sewn onto the fabric backing in overlapping rows, just like the scales of a massive, powerful fish. This was a marvel of both craftsmanship and practical design. The result was a suit that moved with the soldier, fluid and flexible, yet offered incredible protection. A sword slash would have to penetrate through multiple layers of sliding, overlapping metal before ever reaching the skin beneath. But the true power of this armor was revealed not in single combat but in mass formation. When the 10,000 immortals stood shoulder to shoulder, a breathtaking transformation occurred. The individual soldiers vanished. In their place stood a single monolithic entity, a vast wall of shimmering metal that caught the sun and glittered like some mythical beast. The effect was both hypnotic and terrifying. The rustle of 10,000 scale shirts moving in unison would have sounded like a continuous, low hiss. The unbroken, gleaming surface made the entire unit appear as one immense, impervious being. For any army facing them, this created a profound psychological crisis. How do you fight an enemy that does not seem to be made of individual men, but is instead a single, endless, regenerating wall of metal? The very name of the immortals fed into this dread. If one of these perfect soldiers fell in battle, he was instantly replaced from the ranks behind, ensuring the unit's strength never appeared to diminish. Their armor was the physical manifestation of this terrifying concept. It was the skin of an unstoppable force, a visual and auditory symphony of absolute power designed to break an enemy's will long before the first arrow was ever loosed. The shimmering wall of Persian scale armor presented a vision of unified, terrifying power. But what happens when a culture turns its back on uniformity to embrace wild, untamed artistry? The answer lies not on a battlefield but at the bottom of a river. The Battersea Shield is a paradox. It was discovered in the River Thames, a masterpiece of Celtic metalwork from the Iron Age, yet it was never meant to stop a sword. Its bronze face is a swirling, hypnotic vortex of organic forms. Curving lines spiral inward, twisting back on themselves in patterns known as trumpet curves and triskells, creating a sense of perpetual, fluid motion. This is the pinnacle of the Latin style, an art that rejected straight lines and rigid order in favor of the chaos of nature. The effect was achieved through an incredibly delicate technique called repoussé. This meant the artisan worked from the back of the sheet of bronze, carefully hammering out the designs from behind to raise them in low relief on the front. Every spiral, every curve was pushed into existence with meticulous, tiny taps of a hammer. Then, into the recessed channels of this bronze whirlpool, they poured molten red enamel. The result was a stunning contrast of warm, glowing red against the cool, polished metal, a piece that must have looked less like a shield and more like a captured fragment of a living, breathing cosmos. So why was such a fragile, non-functional object created with such staggering skill, only to be cast into the waters of the Thames? This is the central mystery. A shield that cannot shield speaks to a purpose far beyond war. Many historians believe it was a votive offering, a gift to the gods. The Celts saw rivers as sacred thresholds, portals to the other world. By giving this most beautiful object to the water, a chieftain or a priest was performing the ultimate act of devotion, sacrificing immense wealth and artistry to gain divine favor. But the design itself offers another clue. Those hypnotic, swirling patterns are not merely decorative. They may represent a map of the Celtic spiritual universe, a depiction of the interconnectedness of all things, the three realms of land, sea, and sky, or the endless cycle of life, death, and rebirth. To hold the Battersea Shield was not to hold a weapon. It was to hold a universe in your hands, a tangible piece of magic meant to channel power from the gods themselves before it was returned to them, completing a sacred cycle. That Celtic shield, a universe of swirling bronze, was a gift to the gods, but in the cold north, warriors crafted gifts of iron for themselves. Buried in a Norwegian mound beside a chieftain, the G-Germand, Hoo Helmet shatters our popular image of the Viking warrior. This is the only complete helmet ever discovered from the entire Viking Age, a simple, brutal dome of iron that speaks of a culture obsessed with personal, fearsome identity. Its core is a rounded cap forged from 4 plates riveted together, a no-nonsense design built to deflect a crushing axe blow, but it is the face that truly captivates. A solid, curved bar of iron sweeps across the brow, and from it hang 2 chilling, perfectly circular plates that guard the eyes. This is the spectacle guard, a design that would have framed the warrior's gaze with 2 cold iron rings, making his stare the most prominent feature of his face. Above this, a low, sturdy crest runs over the crown of the helmet, and here a small hole offers a tantalizing clue. Archaeologists believe a plume of horse hair may have been fixed here, a shock of color and motion that would have made the wearer seem taller and more dynamic in the chaos of battle. The evidence grows even more intriguing with the discovery of mail fragments around the helmet's lower edge. This suggests it was once fitted with a mail aventail, a curtain of interlocking iron rings that would have protected the neck and shoulders, creating a truly formidable defense. And then there is the possibility, hinted at by remnants of decorative fittings, that this helmet was not just plain iron. It may have been adorned with pressed brass or silver panels, strips of gleaming metal that would have caught the light along the crest and the eye guards. This single artifact forces us to abandon the myth of the horned helmet entirely. The Viking warrior, as revealed by G-Germand, Boo, was a pragmatic fighter who understood the power of psychological terror. He chose a helmet that offered maximum protection while transforming his face into an impersonal, almost mechanical mask. The spectacle guard focused all attention on his eyes, creating an unnerving, unblinking stare. The possible horsehair crest added a touch of savage grandeur. This was not a uniform, it was a personal statement, a declaration that the man inside was a force of nature, shielded by iron and driven by a will as unyielding as the metal that guarded him. This hidden strength defined the armor of the Mamluk warrior. While the Viking's power was in his unblinking iron gaze, the Mamluk Sultanate of Egypt and Syria perfected a defense that was both a physical fortress and a spiritual sanctuary. Their signature armor was a masterpiece of layered ingenuity, known as the mail and plate cuirass. At first glance, an opponent would see only a long, shimmering coat of chain mail, a garment of interlocking iron rings that offered excellent flexibility. But this was a deception. Riveted to the inside of this mail shirt were solid plates of hardened steel, carefully shaped to protect the warrior's vital organs, his chest, back, and torso. These plates remained completely hidden from view, a secret reinforcement against the deadliest threat on the battlefield, the armor-piercing arrow. An enemy archer would aim for the center of mass, expecting his arrow to punch through the mail, only to have it deflect with a jarring clang against the concealed plate. This was tactical brilliance disguised as simple chain mail. Yet the true genius of this armor was etched onto the surfaces of those hidden plates. Before they were sealed away inside their mail shell, the steel was meticulously engraved with flowing, intricate designs. These were not random patterns, they were arabesques, endless, interlacing vegetal motifs that symbolized the infinite nature of creation, and even more importantly, entire verses from the Quran rendered in beautiful calligraphy. For the Mamluk warrior, a slave soldier risen to elite status through martial skill and devotion, this created a profound dual layer of defense. The outer mail and inner plate guarded his body, but the sacred words guarded his soul. In the heat of a frantic cavalry charge with chaos and death all around, the warrior was literally encased in scripture. Every movement would be accompanied by the gentle rustle of mail and the silent presence of divine promises and protections resting against his heart. The armor became a wearable prayer, a constant spiritual reminder that his fate rested in higher hands, transforming his combat from mere violence into an act of faith. This was the ultimate fusion of form and function, where metallurgy met devotion to create a warrior who was both practically invulnerable and spiritually armored. That hidden spiritual armor of the Mamluks was a secret strength, but the Greeks created a defense that was an outright declaration of power. A Greek hoplite could don a muscle cuirass, a bronze chest plate so perfectly sculpted it looked less like armor and more like the body of a god. This was not a simple sheet of metal. Using a technique called annealing and hammering, a master artisan would painstakingly work a single bronze plate over a wooden form, slowly pushing the metal out from within to create the defined ridges of a six-pack abdomen, the sweeping curves of the pectoral muscles, and even the subtle suggestion of the ribcage beneath. The result was a second skin of gleaming bronze, a torso frozen in a state of idealized perpetual fitness. But why would a soldier go into battle with his physique so blatantly on display? This was not about vanity in the modern sense. In the Greek world, physical perfection was a direct reflection of moral and spiritual excellence. A beautiful body signaled a disciplined mind and a noble character. By wearing this sculpted armor, a general or a heroic champion was making a profound statement. He was not merely a man, he was the embodiment of Arit, that ultimate concept of virtue and excellence. On the dusty plains of Marathon or Thermopylae, as the phalanxes clashed, the sight of this gleaming, divine torso moving through the ranks would have been electrifying. For his own men, it was a rallying point, a living standard that inspired courage and loyalty. For the enemy, it was a terrifying vision. They were not facing another mortal warrior. They were facing a demigod, a figure who seemed to have stepped off a temple frieze, a mortal incarnation of Ares himself. The muscle cuirass blurred the line between man and deity, transforming its wearer into a legend before he ever threw a spear. This armor was the ultimate piece of propaganda, a lie made of bronze that everyone, friend and foe alike, desperately wanted to believe was true. While the Greeks sculpted the ideal body in bronze, Chinese armorers built miniature mountain ranges of steel. Known as Shan Wen Kia or mountain pattern armor, this is one of history's most intricate and mystifying defensive systems. Forget simple plates or chain mail. Picture instead a warrior's tunic composed of thousands of tiny, individual metal plaques, each one shaped like a subtle, rounded pyramid. These miniature peaks were not sewn onto a backing or strapped together in rows. Instead, each plate was pierced with multiple holes and then meticulously riveted to its neighbors in an interlocking, staggered pattern. The final texture was a dense, three-dimensional landscape of overlapping scales, a surface that resembled the rugged peaks of a mountain range seen from high above. This was not just a visual effect, it was a structural marvel. The complex, multi-directional overlap meant that a weapon's impact was not just stopped by one plate. The force was instantly distributed across a dozen surrounding plates, dissipating the energy across the entire section of armor. A sword's edge would find no purchase, skittering across the uneven, resilient surface. The armor was also remarkably flexible, allowing for the fluid movements essential for a skilled warrior, yet it offered a defense far superior to most other contemporary designs. But this incredible protection came at an almost unimaginable cost in labor and skill. A single vest required the creation, finishing, and precise riveting of several thousand individual plates. Just one miscalculation in alignment, one misplaced rivet, could compromise the entire garment's integrity. This was not armor for the common soldier. It was a symbol of ultimate status and authority, reserved exclusively for the most elite units, the emperor's own personal guard, and the very highest-ranking generals. To wear Shan Wen Kia was to be clothed in a fortress, a walking testament to the empire's limitless resources and the godlike skill of its master craftsmen. It declared that the man inside was so valuable, his life was shielded by a literal mountain of labor, a defense so complex it bordered on magic. Across the ocean, a civilization built an empire without a single piece of forged steel. The Aztec warrior did not rely on metal but on a garment of layered cloth that defied expectations. This was the ikkahuipili, a word meaning cotton shirt, but it was so much more than simple fabric. Imagine a thick, sleeveless tunic created by stitching together layer upon layer of cotton fabric into a dense, resilient pad. The real genius, however, lay in its preparation. After the quilting was complete, the entire garment was soaked in a special brine, a solution of salt water, and then left to dry in the sun. This process was repeated again and again, saturating the cotton fibers until they crystallized. The result was a stiff, almost woody cuirass that was surprisingly lightweight. When tested against the primary weapons of Mesoamerican warfare, the obsidian-edged macuahudal sword and the atlatl-propelled dart, this quilted armor performed miracles. The dense, crystal-hardened fibers could blunt the sharpest obsidian blade, absorbing the impact of a blow that would have cleaved bare skin. It was a masterpiece of material science, born from an intimate understanding of the local environment. But the ikkahuipili was never meant to be plain. The surface of this padded shirt was a canvas for a warrior's identity and his soul. Intricate, colorful designs were quilted directly into the fabric with dyed cotton threads. These were not mere decorations. A warrior might wear the sinuous, spotted pattern of a jaguar, its powerful form coiling across his chest. Another might bear the fierce, soaring outline of an eagle. These animals were far more than symbols. They represented the two highest military orders in Aztec society, the Jaguar Knights and the Eagle Knights. To wear this imagery was to announce your elite status, your brotherhood, and your unwavering loyalty to the empire. Yet the belief went even deeper. In the Aztec worldview, a warrior did not just represent the jaguar. Through ritual and sheer force of will, he sought to become the jaguar. the quilted pattern was a spiritual conduit, a way to invite the animal's essence into his very being. The jaguar's stealth, its power, and its dominion over the night were believed to flow into the warrior who wore its skin. The eagle's keen sight, its speed, and its command of the skies became his own. This armor was therefore a triple-layered defense. It protected the body with hardened cotton, announced the soldier's rank with brilliant artistry, and shielded his spirit by merging it with the most powerful forces in the natural world. To face an Aztec knight was to confront not just a man, but a jaguar-made cloth, a soaring eagle given human form. From the quilted animal spirits of the Aztecs, we arrive at a world where armor was woven from myth and metal. The Rajput warriors of India believed their battle gear should reflect the splendor of their very souls, and nothing demonstrates this more than the magnificent Char-Aina. The name itself means 4 mirrors. This was not a single breastplate, but a set of 4 large steel plates, 2 for the chest and 2 for the back, connected by mail and straps. When polished to a high sheen, these plates would indeed act as mirrors, flashing brilliantly in the harsh Indian sun, but their true purpose was to dazzle and intimidate. An enemy would see his own distorted reflection rushing toward him, multiplied across the warrior's torso, a disorienting vision of his own impending fate. The surface of these plates was a canvas for storytelling. Master artisans employed a technique called kofgari, a form of damascening where intricate patterns were etched into the steel and then inlaid with pure gold wire. The result was not mere geometric patterns. Delicate floral vines would creep across the steel, blooming into lotuses and other sacred flowers. More powerfully, entire scenes from Hindu mythology were rendered in shimmering gold. A warrior might carry the image of the goddess Durga slaying a buffalo demon on his chest, or Lord Krishna lifting a mountain on his back. To wear this was to cloak oneself in divine narrative, to become a living, breathing extension of cosmic battles between good and evil. This was armor as a declaration of faith, a constant reminder that the warrior fought not just for land or king, but as an agent of divine will. The effect was psychological warfare of the highest order, implying the man inside was blessed, protected, and empowered by the gods themselves. But this divine protection extended to the limbs with the bazu band. These were not simple vambraces. They were masterpieces of articulated metalwork, designed to shield the forearms and elbows while granting the warrior the fluid grace of a dancer. Constructed from multiple steel lames or strips connected by rivets and internal leathers, they formed a flexible, segmented shell. This intricate construction allowed a Rajput warrior to draw a bowstring to its full anchor point or execute the complex, whirling maneuvers of his swordplay without a moment of restriction. Every piece of the bazu band was a work of art. The steel was often damascened with the same golden flora, and the edges might be scalloped or fluted to catch the light. Some designs even incorporated a small, circular shield for the elbow, a mirrored disc that protected the joint while adding another flash of blinding reflection to the warrior's movements. In combat, a Rajput knight was a symphony of light and motion. The 4 great mirrors of his torso blazed like captured suns, while his arms, sheathed in the gleaming, articulated bazu band, became instruments of divinely inspired destruction. This was armor designed to overwhelm every sense, proving that the most formidable defense was often a breathtaking offense to the mind. That Rajput warrior was a walking constellation of golden light, but in Japan, the samurai turned his own head into a personal monument. Rising above the iron bowl of the Kabuto helmet were the crests, and some of these creations defied all logic and practicality. These were the Kaweri Kabuto, the strange helmets, where the samurai's fierce individualism erupted into breathtaking sculpture. The helmet's summit could be a pair of enormous, sweeping rabbit ears made from lacquered paper and wood. Another might feature a fully realized, gilded seashell curving over the crown. Some crests took the form of a praying mantis, its delicate, spindly legs and aggressive posture captured in iron and leather, forever poised to strike. Others bore a great sun disk, a shimmering circle of polished metal that haloed the warrior's head in brilliance. The most ambitious were entire dioramas depicting scenes from folklore, with tiny figures of gods or heroes battling across the helmet's landscape. These were not subtle additions, they were enormous, often fragile, and utterly conspicuous. So why would a warrior deliberately make himself the tallest, most eye-catching target on the battlefield? The answer lies in the very nature of samurai warfare, in the chaotic melee of thousands of armored men, where vision was obscured by dust and the helmets of comrades. Identification was a matter of life and death. A general directing his troops from horseback needed to be seen, his banner recognized in an instant. The Kaweri Kabuto crest was a unique personal flagpole. A soldier would only need to glance up to spot his lord's distinctive sun disk or rabbit ears, a beacon cutting through the fog of war to rally the troops. But this practical function was deeply entwined with psychological warfare. To face an opponent whose helmet was crowned with a mythical beast or a divine symbol was to face a legend. It dehumanized the warrior, transforming him from a man into a supernatural entity. The soldier charging behind a helmet shaped like a ferocious mantis wasn't just fighting another samurai. He was fighting the spirit of the insect itself, an unnerving, alien presence that shattered morale. These crests were a declaration of identity so powerful it bordered on metamorphosis, proving that in the samurai's world, the most potent weapon was often a perfectly crafted illusion. Those samurai crests were monuments to individuality, but in late medieval Europe, a different kind of masterpiece encased the warrior entirely. German Gothic plate armor presented the knight not as a man, but as a living sculpture of steel. Its most defining feature was the fluting, a cascade of precise, vertical grooves that covered every surface from the sabaton on his feet to the sallet helmet on his head. This was not a superficial texture. Each groove was a masterfully engineered ridge, carefully hammered into the steel to create a series of alternating peaks and valleys. The effect was transformative. A solid, heavy breastplate would have been brutally strong but immensely cumbersome. By adding this intricate fluting, the armorer achieved a miracle of physics. The grooves acted like the corrugated metal of a modern shipping container or the folded paper in a cardboard box, adding immense structural rigidity. The armor could now resist crushing blows and piercing lances far more effectively, all while using thinner, lighter plates of steel. The knight gained superior protection without sacrificing the agility and endurance needed for a long, grueling battle. And then there was the visual sorcery. When sunlight struck this fluted suit, it did not simply gleam. The light fractured, creating sharp, dynamic contrasts of brilliant highlights and deep black shadows. This play of light sculpted the knight's silhouette, making him appear impossibly tall, slender, and dangerously elegant. He became a shimmering, shifting column of light and dark, a figure whose very form seemed to defy the blunt realities of combat. He was no longer just a man in metal. He was an elemental force, an iron gale given human shape, as terrifyingly beautiful as he was invincible. That German knight was a sculpture of shifting light and shadow, but the Assyrian warrior was a cog in a machine of stone. To understand his armor, we must walk the halls of a lost palace in Nineveh, where the walls themselves tell his story. Carved into immense alabaster slabs are endless processions of soldiers, their forms and equipment rendered with such precise detail that we can reconstruct their gear down to the last lace. They are not clad in large plates, but in a dense, textured fabric of metal. This is lamellar armor, a defense built from hundreds, sometimes thousands, of small, rectangular plates. Each individual plate, often made of bronze or iron, was pierced with several holes along its top and sides. They were then laced together horizontally with sturdy leather cords to form a solid row, and then each row was laced vertically to the one above and below it. The final result was a stiff, yet remarkably flexible, shirt of overlapping scales that moved with the soldier's body like a second skin of articulated metal. This was the armor of an empire built on speed and terror. An Assyrian archer standing tall in a racing chariot needed to draw his powerful composite bow to its full extent, a motion that required immense freedom in the shoulders and back. His lamellar cuirass provided exactly that, bending and twisting with him without gaping open at the seams. A charioteer, guiding his team through the chaos of battle with both hands, was protected by that same resilient, flexible shell. But the true power of this armor is revealed not in its function for one man, but in its appearance on 10,000. The palace reliefs do not show a rabble of individualistic warriors. They depict a monolithic, uniformed force. Every archer, every spearman, every charioteer is shown wearing the same style of lamellar, the same conical helmet, and carrying the same shield. This was a deliberate and brilliant act of propaganda. A visitor to the king's court viewing these endless carvings would be overwhelmed by the message. They were not looking at men. They were looking at an institution, a single, terrifying entity with countless identical parts. The sheer, dehumanizing uniformity communicated an empire of limitless resources and absolute discipline. It told subject and enemy alike that the Assyrian war machine was endless, replaceable, and utterly unstoppable. The intricate lacing of each lamellar shirt was a marvel of craftsmanship, but the real masterpiece was the illusion it created. The transformation of individual courage into a single, inexorable force of imperial will. A simple cotton vest seems like a humble answer to the thunder of muskets, yet in the late Joseon dynasty, this was the cutting edge of survival. The Myeonj Begap was born from a desperate need. Korean forces were facing foreign armies equipped with powerful new weapons, the matchlock muskets that could punch through traditional metal armors with terrifying ease. The solution was not to forge thicker steel, but to think in layers. This armor was not a single garment, but a system. It consisted of a sleeveless jacket and a pair of trousers, each constructed from an astonishing 30 layers of densely woven cotton cloth. These layers were quilted together with thousands of meticulous stitches, creating a thick, resilient pad. But the true innovation was in the finishing process. The completed suit was repeatedly soaked in a brine solution and left to dry, a cycle that caused the cotton fibers to crystallize and harden. The result was a stiff, almost cardboard-like cuirass that was remarkably lightweight. When a lead musket ball struck this prepared cotton, something remarkable happened. The dense, matted fibers absorbed and dissipated the bullet's kinetic energy, blunting its force and often stopping it completely without penetrating the warrior's body. This was a revolutionary counter to a revolutionary weapon. The process of creating just one set was a monumental task, requiring immense amounts of precious cloth and countless hours of skilled labor. This was not armor for every soldier. It was reserved for elite units who stood as the last line of defense against overwhelming firepower. The Myeonj Begap represents a pivotal moment in the eternal arms race between weapon and armor. It was a soft, flexible answer to a hard, piercing problem, proving that the most advanced defense sometimes meant abandoning metal entirely and returning to the humble, layered strength of cloth. High in the Andes, another emperor moved in a suit of sunlight and feathers. The armor of an Incan Sopa Inca was a declaration of divinity, a physical manifestation of his claim to direct descent from the sun god Intai. While the acidic soils of the mountains have reclaimed almost all traces of these masterpieces, we can reconstruct their likely splendor from the accounts of stunned Spanish chroniclers and the surviving art that depicts these divine rulers. The base was probably a thick, quilted cotton tunic, similar to the Icahuapilli of the Aztecs, providing a flexible and surprisingly resilient foundation. But upon this canvas, the Incas painted with light and life. Imagine a cascade of small, shimmering plaques hammered from pure gold and silver sewn across the chest and back. These were not mere decorations. They were a deliberate recreation of the sun's own brilliance, a way for the emperor to wear the very essence of his celestial father. The gold represented the sun and the silver the moon, placing the entire cosmos on his shoulders. But the true marvel was the featherwork. Teams of specialized artisans would have spent countless hours tying the tiny, iridescent feathers of tropical birds onto the tunic's surface. Emerald green quetzal feathers, crimson macaw plumes, and the deep blue feathers of the tanager were woven into intricate geometric patterns, creating a living, breathing mosaic that shifted color with every movement. This was more than just opulence. Each bird was a creature of the sacred Amazon, a realm of immense spiritual power to the Inca. By wearing their feathers, the Sapa Inca was demonstrating his dominion over every ecological zone of his vast empire, from the mountain peaks to the jungle lowlands. Some designs likely mimicked the rosette patterns of a jaguar's pelt. The jaguar was the ultimate predator of the Americas, a symbol of untamed power and authority over the night. For the Sapa Inca, who was the sun's representative, to also wear the skin of the night's greatest hunter was to proclaim his power was total, encompassing all opposites, light and dark, day and night. This armor was not for the chaos of the battlefield, it was for the precise choreography of ritual. During ceremonies at the Sun Temple in Cusco, the Sapa Inca would have appeared before his people in this radiant suit. The effect would have been hypnotic. As he moved, the gold would flash like a miniature sun, while the feathers rustled with the whisper of distant, sacred forests. He was not a man leading an army. He was a god walking among mortals, a living embodiment of the empire itself, his very costume proof of his absolute power over the natural and spiritual worlds. To see him was to understand that his authority was as undeniable as the sunrise, woven from the very fabric of the universe. A frozen scream in polished steel would stare back at you across the Renaissance battlefield. This was the Burgonet helmet with a grotesque mask, a piece where the armorer's hammer became a sculptor's tool, shaping cold metal into expressions of pure psychological terror. The Burgonet itself was an open-faced helmet, popular for its good visibility and ventilation, but for the wealthiest commanders and elite cavalry, this was not enough. They commissioned masks, entire visors that were works of dramatic art. A master smith would take a single sheet of steel and, through countless hours of annealing and precise hammering from the inside, would raise the features of a face. This was not a generic face. It could be the serene, detached countenance of a Roman god, an expression of stoic calm that was utterly unnerving amid the violence. More often, it was a twisted visage of a snarling demon, its brow furrowed in eternal rage, lips curled back from sharpened steel teeth, and a long, sharp nose completing the monstrous effect. Some masks even portrayed human faces locked in a silent laugh or a contemptuous sneer, a mockery of the very human emotion of fear. The artistry was breathtaking. Every wrinkle on the brow, every curl of the mustache, every vein on the temple was rendered in minute detail, then polished to a mirror shine or darkened with chemical bluing to accentuate the shadows. But why wear such an elaborate and potentially restrictive piece? The answer lies in the complete dehumanization of the wearer. In a time when combat was still intensely personal, fought at the length of a sword or a lance, you expected to see the face of your opponent. You expected to see fear, anger, or determination in their eyes. To face a man whose face was an unmoving, metallic grimace shattered that fundamental expectation. There were no eyes to lock with, no telltale flinch or grimace to read. You were not fighting a man, you were fighting a statue, an automaton that felt no pain and knew no fear. The mask created an impassable psychological barrier, a one-way window where the warrior inside could see your humanity, while you saw only a grotesque, unfeeling artifact. This was the pinnacle of Renaissance art applied to the grim reality of war, where the most powerful weapon was not the sharpest blade but the most unsettling silence. A silent scream in steel gives way to a face of serene, eternal gold. Among the most breathtaking artifacts of the ancient world is the Thracian golden funeral mask, a masterpiece from the panegyric treasure. This is not a piece for the battlefield but for the tomb. Crafted from a single sheet of pure, heavy gold, it was hammered with impossible delicacy to capture the likeness of a nobleman. The features are calm and idealized, with a straight nose, a gentle mouth, and eyes that stare forward with a placid, unearthly focus. Every detail is rendered with precision, from the individual strands of hair etched onto the forehead to the finely shaped eyebrows. It is a portrait in metal, a face frozen in a state of perfect peace. But why would such immense wealth and artistry be buried forever? For the Thracian nobility, this mask was the ultimate armor. It was not designed to stop a spear or an arrow. Its purpose was to shield the soul. They believed that death was a journey to another world, a passage fraught with spiritual dangers. By sealing the deceased's face behind this imperishable, divine metal, they were creating an indestructible vessel for the spirit. The gold protected the essence of the person from corruption and malevolent forces, ensuring a safe arrival in the afterlife. More than mere protection, the mask was a declaration of status to the gods themselves. It presented the wearer not as he was in life, but as he wished to be for all eternity, a being of flawless beauty, wealth, and divine favor. This was the final and most critical piece of a noble's regalia, the armor that guarded not his body, but his very identity across the threshold of eternity. A warrior's status could be read from his head to his waist in the Zulu kingdom. Unlike the full metal suits of Europe, a Zulu warrior's regalia was a masterpiece of symbolic minimalism, designed for lightning-fast movement and psychological dominance. The most significant marker was the isikoko, a dense headring crafted from fiber and beeswax. This was not a crown anyone could wear. A young man was only permitted to fashion his isikoko after he had proven his courage in battle and was formally married, marking his transition from youth to a full member of society. The headring was a permanent fixture, worn for life, its dark, polished surface a constant, visible announcement of his experience and honor. It told his brothers in arms and his enemies alike that he was no untested recruit, but a seasoned fighter with a family and a stake in the kingdom's future. Below this symbol of maturity swung the isainin, the loin cover. This was far more than simple modesty. It was a dynamic, personalized record of a warrior's life. Made from strips of animal pelts or tails, often from genet cats or monkeys, the isainin's patterns and materials were a complex code. The specific arrangement of the strips, their colors, and the types of skins used could denote his specific amabatho or age-grade regiment. A warrior fighting under a great king like Shaka would be instantly identifiable to others in the impi, the army, by the distinct design of his isainin. This created a powerful visual cohesion on the battlefield, allowing for immediate unit recognition in the dust and chaos of combat, but the code went even deeper. A particularly brave deed might be rewarded with the right to add a unique pelt or a specific pattern, turning the isainin into a wearable resume of valor. The entire system was engineered for the Zulu style of war, which relied on incredible speed, aggressive close quarters fighting with the Ikalwa stabbing spear, and enveloping tactics. Heavy armor would have been a death sentence. This lightweight, symbolic regalia granted total freedom of movement while simultaneously broadcasting a warrior's identity, his achievements, and his unshakable place within the most formidable military machine in southern Africa. To face a Zulu impi was to confront a wall of seasoned, agile men, each one a living document of pride and prowess, their silent, symbolic language speaking volumes about their lethal intent. That silent golden face of a Thracian king speaks of a soul protected for eternity. but in the courts of Renaissance Europe, another king commissioned armor to protect his legend in the here and now. The parade armor of Henry VIII of England represents the absolute zenith of the armorer's craft, not as a tool for war, but as a weapon of propaganda. This was steel transformed into a wearable tapestry of pure power. Every single inch of the steel was a canvas. Master etchers used sharp tools to carve intricate scenes directly into the hardened metal. You would find not just abstract patterns, but entire narratives unfolding across a greave or a breastplate. Biblical triumphs, scenes from classical mythology, and romantic allegories were all rendered with the detail of an oil painting. Then the magic happened. The deeply etched lines were filled with pure gold, a technique called gilding. The armor was then meticulously polished, leaving the gold permanently inlaid within the dark blued steel background. The effect was staggering. In the flickering torchlight of a tournament or a royal procession, Henry would have appeared encased in a shimmering silhouette of golden light, a walking monument to his own divinity and wealth. Some of his most famous sets, like the horned armor, featured grotesque masks and sweeping, ornate horns that turned the king into a mythical, almost monstrous figure of untouchable authority. Even more ingenious were his garniture sets. A single garniture was not one suit of armor, but a whole system of interchangeable parts. From over 100 individual components, his armorer could configure the perfect outfit for any occasion. There was a specific configuration for the joust, with extra thick plates on the left side to face an opponent's lance. Another configuration existed for foot combat in the tournament lists, offering greater mobility. And then there was the full parade suit, the most ornate and breathtaking version, designed purely for show. This was the ultimate expression of a king's reach. It demonstrated that his wealth was so vast, he could commission a single, impossibly expensive artifact that served a dozen different symbolic purposes. This armor had one primary enemy, and it was not a foreign lance. It was obscurity. Henry VIII used these gilded masterpieces to project an image of a warrior king, a scholar, a romantic, and a divinely chosen ruler, all hammered into one seamless golden shell. A Mongol warrior scaling a besieged city wall carried the weight of an entire empire on his shoulders. While their horse archers are legendary, their success in storming fortifications relied on a brutally pragmatic suit of armor, a masterclass in layered defense. The core of this system was a heavy coat of leather and iron lameller. Picture hundreds of small, rectangular iron plates, each one drilled with holes and laced together with sturdy leather cords into a stiff, yet flexible shirt that reached down to the knees. This was not a single, cumbersome shell. It was a modular system with separate sections for the torso, shoulders, and arms, allowing for a remarkable range of motion essential for climbing siege ladders under a hail of arrows and stones. But the true ingenuity was hidden underneath. Many of these warriors wore a long, loose undershirt made of the finest silk. This seems like a bizarre luxury for a soldier, but it was a life-saving medical innovation. When an arrow pierced the outer lamellar armor, it would rarely carry the silk into the wound. Instead, the strong, fibrous silk would wrap tightly around the arrowhead. This created a clean, sealed puncture that a field medic could then carefully extract by gently pulling on the silk cloth, preventing the barbed head from tearing through flesh and causing a fatal injury. This combination of hard, overlapping plates and a soft, protective inner layer created a comprehensive defense. The lamellar dispersed the impact of falling debris and deflected slashing weapons, while the silk managed the specific, insidious threat of projectile penetration. The intricacy here was not in delicate engravings or golden inlays, but in the flawless, efficient integration of different materials, each solving a distinct problem of survival. This armor was a product of RELENTLESS Chinese letter testing across continents, refined to protect the empire's most vital asset. Its genius was a direct reflection of the Mongol philosophy of war, where every element from the grand strategy to the shirt on a soldier's back was engineered for one purpose: absolute victory. The Moro warrior of the southern Philippines stood as a living crossroads, his gear a testament to a world of ancient trade and fierce independence. His primary weapon, the kampilan, was a single-edged sword of terrifying reach, but its true character was revealed in the hilt. This was not a simple grip. It was a jaw, a gaping maw carved from a single piece of wood or bone, often depicting a mythical dragon or a crocodile, its mouth wide open as if to devour the hand that held it. This fearsome form was then covered in the intricate, swirling language of Okia. These were not random patterns. Spirals and flowing plant-based motifs were carved with breathtaking precision, each curl and vine representing the resilience and interconnectedness of life. Into these carved channels, artisans would inlay delicate pieces of mother-of-pearl or bone, creating a stunning contrast of white against the dark wood. The effect was both beautiful and unsettling, a weapon that was as much a spiritual talisman as a tool of war, but the warrior's defense was just as hybrid as his offense. He wore a suit of armor that defied simple categorization. A shirt of chain mail, likely acquired through trade with European or Middle Eastern merchants, protected his torso. Yet this was not worn alone. Over this mail, or integrated with it, were plates of native carapace armor, crafted from the thick, resilient shells of sea turtles or from hardened water buffalo horn. These organic plates were carved with the same Okia motifs found on the kampilan, turning each piece into a unique work of art. This combination was a masterstroke of practical adaptation. The chainmail resisted slashing cuts, while the curved, rigid plates of shell or horn deflected blunt impacts and piercing thrusts. More than that, this hybrid armor was a perfect symbol of the Moro identity. It spoke of a culture confident enough to adopt foreign technology, yet fiercely proud, reshaping it with their own ancient artistic spirit to create something entirely and fearsomely their own. Buried with a single warrior in a tomb at Dendra lies a bronze second skin. The Dendra panoply is not merely a collection of pieces, but a complete exoskeleton of hammered bronze, a technological marvel that predates the classical hoplite by centuries. This was not a simple cuirass. It was a full body harness composed of 15 individual pieces of bronze sheet, all carefully shaped and hinged together. A solid breastplate and backplate formed the core, but from there the complexity soared. Articulated shoulder guards curved over the deltoids, while multiple curved plates protected the lower torso and the upper arms. Even the neck was encircled by a high, protective gorget. This was a puzzle of metal, each piece designed to slide and pivot against its neighbor, granting the wearer a surprising degree of movement while leaving almost no part of his body exposed. The sheer labor involved is almost unimaginable. A master smith would have had to anneal and hammer each bronze sheet over a wooden form, slowly coaxing the metal to mimic the contours of a specific man's body, ensuring the final suit was both a perfect fit and a rigid shield. Why would such an incredible resource, a fortune in bronze and specialized craft, be invested in protecting one person? The answer may lie not in the infantry line, but in the chariot. The panoply is heavy, and a warrior on foot would have been formidable but slow, a bronze giant struggling to turn quickly. Mounted on a speeding chariot, however, this limitation vanishes. The chariot becomes his mobile fortress, and the warrior inside becomes an unstoppable, armored projectile. He could rain javelins down on enemy formations, his body a near impenetrable stronghold as his driver maneuvered across the battlefield. This suit, then, is more than armor. It is the physical evidence of a social revolution where warfare became the domain of a new elite, a chariot-riding aristocracy whose power was literally forged in bronze. The Dendra panoply marks the moment a single human life was deemed so valuable, an entire kingdom's resources were marshaled to encase him in metal. High in the Himalayas, where the air thins and the mountains touch the sky, armor became a portable temple. The Tibetan Four Mirrors armor echoes the Indian Char-Aina in its basic form, yet its soul is profoundly different. A warrior would don a long, heavy coat of mail, and over this he would secure 4 large, often circular, plates of steel. One plate shielded his chest, another his back, and 2 smaller ones protected his sides. When polished to a high gleam, these plates would flash like captured sun on snow, a dazzling display meant to disorient and intimidate. But the true power of this armor was not in its reflection. It was in the sacred geography hammered into its surface. Master artisans used the repoussé technique, working from the back of each steel plate to raise intricate designs in high relief. Instead of scenes of battle or royal genealogy, they pressed the Ashtamangala, the 8 auspicious symbols of Buddhism, deep into the metal. An endless knot symbolized the interconnectedness of all things and the infinite wisdom of the Buddha. A lotus flower represented purity, rising unstained from the mud of worldly existence. A golden fish signified happiness and freedom, while a treasure vase promised spiritual and material abundance. Each symbol was a carefully chosen prayer, a specific aspect of the Dharma meant to guide the warrior's mind and shield his spirit. This was armor designed for a world where every conflict was both external and internal. The steel plates guarded the body against sword and spear, but the sacred symbols were a fortress for the mind, a constant visual reminder of compassion, wisdom, and the true nature of reality. In the frenzy of combat, a warrior could focus on the conch shell symbol at his heart, its form representing the far-reaching sound of the Buddha's teachings, cutting through the chaos of fear and hatred. He was not just fighting an enemy, he was navigating a path, his armor a map back to his own humanity. This intricate metalwork transformed violence into a sacred act, a test of skill where the ultimate victory was not over another, but over the turmoil within one's own soul. A knight's journey was announced not by the clatter of his sword, but by the delicate chime at his heels. Gilded spurs were the ultimate symbol of his hard-won rank, a final and resonant detail in the symphony of his armor. Far from simple riding tools, these were masterpieces of the goldsmith's art. Crafted from gold or gilded silver, their surfaces swirled with intricate filigree wire, twisted into the shapes of heraldic beasts like dragons or griffins. Tiny cells were filled with vibrant enamel, creating shimmering fields of crimson, azure, and emerald that flashed with every movement. The roll, the star-shaped wheel at the back, was often pierced with delicate patterns, transforming a functional piece into a jewel. Receiving these spurs was the culminating moment of a long and arduous ceremony, the final act that transformed a squire into a knight. This was not a private gift but a public declaration. The intricate designs were a wearable catechism of chivalric virtue. A lion might symbolize courage, a unicorn purity, and the endless knots of the filigree represented the unbreakable oaths of loyalty sworn to his lord and his lady. With every step, the soft, persistent jingle of the spurs created an audible aura of nobility, a constant reminder to all who heard it of the wearer's elevated station and the sacred code he was bound to uphold. In the mud and chaos of the world, that gentle, metallic whisper was the sound of an ideal made manifest, a romantic promise of honor that rang clear above the din. That gentle chime of the gilded spur is a world away from the relentless, repetitive hammering that created the warrior's true second skin. Beneath the brilliant surcoats and shining plates of a medieval knight lay a hidden marvel of patience and fire, the riveted mail hauberk. To truly understand this armor, you must forget the finished shirt and focus on a single, perfect iron ring. A smith would first draw a thin iron rod through a tapering hole in a steel plate, a process called drawing, to create a uniform wire. This wire was then coiled tightly around a metal mandrel, forming a long, slender spring. Using a sharp chisel, he would then slice this spring down its length, creating hundreds of individual open rings, each one a tiny C-shape of iron. The real magic, however, began with the rivet. Each of these C-shaped rings had its ends flattened and pierced with a microscopic hole. The smith would then place a tiny sliver of iron, the rivet itself, into this hole. Holding the ring firm on a small anvil, he would use a specialized hammer to peen over the ends of this rivet, mushrooming the metal and permanently closing the ring. This was not a task of brute force but of exquisite precision. One mistap could ruin the ring or worse, weaken it, and this entire painstaking process was just for one ring. A single hauberk, a knee-length shirt of mail, could demand over 20,000 of them. Each of those 20,000 rings was then woven into the garment by hand, passed through 4 others in a pattern called 4-in-1, creating a dense, flexible metal fabric. The labor involved is almost incomprehensible. A master mail maker working for 10 hours a day might complete only a few thousand rings in a week. A full hauberk represented months, sometimes an entire year, of solitary, focused toil. This was not a product of a factory, but the life's work of an artist whose canvas was iron and whose brush was a hammer. The true intricacy of this armor was never meant to be seen from a distance. It was a hidden language of dedication, a testament to the belief that a single human life was worth protecting with hundreds of thousands of perfect hammered blows. That hidden language of dedication found in mail speaks of the value of a single life, but one ancient culture built its entire identity on the opposite principle. The shield of a Spartan hoplite bore one of history's most potent symbols, a stark capital lambda painted in bright crimson. This was not an intricate animal or a scene from myth. It was the first letter of Lace Demon, the name for their homeland, a simple, angular shape anyone could paint. Yet this unadorned design was a masterpiece of psychological engineering. When a Spartan phalanx marched into battle, every man carried an identical shield emblazoned with that same lambda. The effect was a visual and mental transformation. The individual soldier vanished, his identity erased and replaced by his function within the unit. He became a single component in a living, breathing fortress, his shield not his own, but a piece of the communal wall protecting the man to his left. This was the very essence of Spartan philosophy. A citizen was not an individual, he was a cell in the body of the state. His personal glory, his fears, even his name, were irrelevant next to the survival and victory of Lace Demon. The uniform lambda was a constant, silent reminder of this brutal contract. There were no personalized crests or family emblems to boast of one's lineage, only the collective identity of the phalanx. This created an intimidation factor that was almost supernatural. An enemy would not see 1,000 different men, each with their own breaking point. They would see a single, monolithic entity, a red and bronze machine that felt no pain and knew no fear, advancing with a discipline that seemed inhuman. The true intricacy of the lambda was not in its brushstrokes, but in the profound political meaning it hammered into every warrior's mind from childhood. It was the ultimate symbol of a society that had perfected the art of collective will, proving that the simplest design could wield the most formidable power. That simple crimson lambda was a declaration of collective identity, but our final design embraces a universal predator. Across continents and centuries, the dragon and the serpent coiled their way onto the warrior's skin, a shared symbol of ultimate power in the face of death. Roman cavalrymen galloping along the empire's frontiers sometimes wore helmets crowned with a bronze dragon's head, its jaws agape and a long, silken tail streaming behind like a serpentine banner. This was the Draco standard, a wind sock that hissed and twisted in the air, turning the rider into a herald of myth. In feudal Japan, the same instinct appeared in the lacquered scales of an Omicron yoroi, where the lacing could be arranged to mimic the overlapping skin of a serpent, a subtle, textured pattern whispering of a hidden reptilian nature. And in the workshops of Renaissance Germany, armorers hammered steel into scales so fine and precise they could have been stripped from a legendary worm. the fluting on a breastplate evoking the powerful musculature of a coiled beast. Why did this specific creature, in all its varied forms, become the most enduring motif in the history of armor? The answer lies in the dragon's unique portfolio of terror. It was the perfect fusion of every earthly predator. It had the scales of a fish or a serpent, making it virtually impenetrable. It had the claws of a great cat and the wings of an eagle, granting it dominion over every element. Its breath was fire or poison, a weapon that killed from a distance, to where the dragon's image was to perform a kind of sympathetic magic. A Roman trooper carrying the Draco was not just a soldier, he was the vessel for a divine wind, a force of chaos harnessed for Rome. A samurai whose armor shimmered with serpent scale lacing was not just a man, he was invoking the dragon's legendary invulnerability, its scales a metaphor for an impervious defense. For the European knight encased in scale mail, he was becoming the monster of his own legends, a creature so fearsome it could only be slain by a saint or a perfect hero. This intricate cross-cultural obsession reveals a profound truth about the human heart facing battle. When your own mortal strength feels insufficient, you borrow the might of a myth. You wrap yourself in the skin of the ultimate predator, hoping its ferocity will flow into your arm. Its impervious hide will become your own, and its terrifying legend will eclipse your very human fear. The dragon armor was the final, most intricate lie a warrior could tell himself and his enemy, a declaration that the man within was no longer a man at all. From the primal invocation of the boar's spirit to the divine gold of a king's eternal mask, we have walked through 3,000 years of human ingenuity. We have seen armor sculpted like a god's torso and woven from sacred words, witnessed warriors transform into demons, dragons, and living mountains of steel. Every tusk, every scale, every stitch of silk cord and swirl of enamel was a deliberate choice, a word in a silent, universal language. These masterpieces were never mere decoration. They were a complex dialect of power, a declaration of faith, a shield for the soul, and a weapon aimed squarely at the enemy's mind. They wove together the practical needs of survival with the deepest yearnings of the human spirit, turning mortal soldiers into vessels for something far greater than themselves. So the next time you see a piece of ancient armor in a museum or a history book, look closer. Past the gleam of metal and the patina of age, past the obvious function of defense, ask yourself the most important question. What story is it trying to tell? Was it a prayer, a threat, or a promise of immortality? We would love to hear which of these intricate designs captured your imagination the most. Was it the spiritual gold of the Scythians, the silent scream of the Burgonet mask, or the collective power of the Spartan lambda? Share your favorite in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this journey through the mysteries of history, subscribe for more adventures into the past.